everyone. Welcome back. Today's episode is going to be extremely impactful, emotional, raw, real. I'm so grateful to have my cousin Amy with us today. She is tuning in from Zoom. We are at the comforts of our own home, given the circumstances. But I'm so grateful that she took the time to be with me today. She has suffered an enormous loss in her life with her family, and I wanted to share her story today and ask her some great questions to dive a little bit deeper into what she has gone through and maybe help some people out there that are dealing with grief and loss and, just not sure where to turn. So her story is incredible. On January 14th of 2013, she lost her little baby girl, Maya, her and her husband. And Maya was 22 months old. The story goes that the night before they put her to bed, and when they woke up, they went to wake her up and she did not wake up. And I can just imagine, I have, a almost 9-year-old son, a 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old girl. And anyone who has a child can only imagine how that would feel to have your child not wake up. And so today I wanted to share her story. I'm gonna be asking her some difficult questions, and I just appreciate her opening up to us. And as I mentioned, I trust that this will help some people out there. Whether you've suffered from a loss or not, as impactful as the loss of a child, I think this can be valuable for anyone in what to say to someone that's grieving or the person themselves that's going through that. So excited to have you today. So thank you, Amy. So this is my cousin, Amy, and I'm excited to have her here with us today. I wanted to spend some time with Amy today over the next few minutes here and just share with you a little bit about how she's feeling, some things that have worked for her along the years. She was an amazing, beautiful little girl, 22 months old when she passed. She's 6 months older than my son, Connor, now. So I just imagine the heartache and the grief and, the mourning that Amy would go through over the years. And I thought this would be a very impactful interview that she could share with us some things that have worked. I know myself, I have never been through a loss like you've gone through, Amy. And so this will be, helpful for someone like myself as well. So thank you.
Crying already.
Okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
Thank you for being with me today. I really appreciate it. And I know this is, might not be easy for you, but I think it's going to impact a lot of people. So, the first thing I just wanted to ask you is, what would you say are some tips for someone that's gone through what you've been through? What are some strategies that have worked over the years for you to kind of be able to move forward? Some things that have worked and maybe some things that you've found haven't worked.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks. I was so worried that I would cry, and then hearing you tell our story, of course, I teared up a little bit. Even 7 years later, talking about Maya, sometimes I feel happy, sometimes I feel sad. So you just never know what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis. And that's actually a huge part of being a grieving parent. You just never know how you're going to feel day to day. So you have to embrace that and kind of go with it most of the time. For me personally, I am a bit of a talker. So for me to process my grief, it was very helpful for me to join support groups with other moms, other parents. It was moms and dads, but I found that a lot of times it was primarily moms who would join these support groups. They would be very informal gatherings, and we would share our stories about our children. We would laugh and cry together. And for me, it was a safe space because you could say anything about how you're feeling, about your children, whether they be your living children or the children that have passed. You could talk about your spouses, and it would be a very non-judgmental environment because we all know what each other have been through. Even though our stories are different, our children might have been different ages, different circumstances surrounding their passing. You could say anything in that environment and feel safe and support it. Yeah, for me, that was really important.
I think, that makes sense. I think you probably found comfort, of course, in being around people that have gone through the same, as opposed to being around a bunch of people that you don't feel you can relate to, connect with.
That's right. Because sometimes you have thoughts in your head about the way you're feeling, and you can't really say that in front of other mom friends or even family, siblings. People are going to think I'm crazy if I say this out loud. Right. But when you say those things to a room full of other grieving parents, all of a sudden you're not crazy. That's just the way we all feel sometimes.
So now you have a husband, of course.
Yes.
How long you've been married?
15 years.
15 years.
16 years this summer.
Wow. Yeah. And
Yeah.
obviously this is impactful for both you and your spouse. What are some things that have worked with you in communication? People know that quite often this can really, be hurtful to a marriage or a relationship, difficult to kind of move past. What are some things that have worked for you guys as a couple, for, maybe communication or what have you?
So for us, well, first of all, I think men and women grieve very differently. And that's not to say that every couple is going to grieve differently, but I have found through the years that Jason and I do grieve quite differently. I'm a little bit more open. I might be more emotional or willing to show my emotions more, and he's a bit more closed off, not really keen on the idea of therapy, counseling, and stuff like that. So for us, it was important to acknowledge our differences, first of all, and then support each other as we choose our own ways of grieving, if that makes sense. Like for me, I would be going off to the meetings, the support groups, perhaps speaking to my social worker or a psychologist. He would do like self-grieving or self-therapy, if you will.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's hard to explain, but
Well, that makes sense.
Because other couples would do couples therapy in terms of grief counseling, and that works for them. It just didn't really work for us. We did try it once. I'm not going to say we didn't try it, because like in the beginning, you just want to do anything that you think might help. So he did go with me one time to do grief counseling, but I think he felt very uncomfortable. It is an uncomfortable thing to talk about your child in that way to a stranger.
So would you say that, in the beginning, because it's all so unknown and your whole world turned upside down that one day, it's good to, like you say, try a bunch of different things in the beginning, see what works, and then kind of go from there, because really everyone deals with grief differently.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't go into this with a plan. Well, in particular, our situation, of course, it was so sudden. We never in a million years thought that this would happen to one of our kids, right? So we were completely caught off guard and in shock, and it just turns your whole life upside down. So any kind of coping mechanism that you can find, I don't think it's not going to be wrong. It's anything that you can do to help relieve the pain and suffering, do it pretty much. So like not just sort of formal counseling or informal grief groups, also just leaning on friends and family. We both did that, together or separately.
Yes.
Found ways to, I guess, move forward and move on with the support of our friends and family. Huge part, I think, too, is the friends and family component. They don't have to know what you're going through. They don't have to know anything about grief or anything about losing a child, but just knowing that they're there for you, that they've reached out and are saying, like, we don't know what you're feeling. We don't know what you're going through. If you ever want to talk, if you ever want to get together, I'm here for you.
I want to continue down that road. So you're kind of saying, with family members and whatnot, as I was saying, like I've never dealt with a loss of a child, and a lot of people also have not dealt with, especially a young child, that you didn't get a lot of time with. What advice would you give to someone like myself on what they can say to someone that's gone through a tragedy that you, like yourself, that you've gone through?
Oh, that's a really great question, actually, because I know when Maya initially passed, I'm sure everyone was in such shock, obviously including us. Nobody knew what to say to us. Nobody knew what to do, what to say, what would help. And I mean, really, in the beginning, nothing really helps, because you're just in this terribly dark and horrible place, to be honest. But look, I have 7 years of hindsight now. So looking back, I can see how much it meant to us to have our family and our close friends, not even close friends, anyone, coworkers, colleagues, old friends, new friends, just anyone that would reach out to us in the most terrible time of our lives, just to say, hey, how are you doing? Hey, do you want to go for a drink? Let's meet for coffee. Didn't matter if we didn't feel like it, or people would say, is it okay if I pop by? I've got dinner for you. I've got this for you or that for you. I've got a present for Zoe.
Is it fair to say something is better than nothing? Like,
Yes,
would you
that's
rather
exactly,
someone
yes.
acknowledge that
Oh, absolutely.
something's happened as opposed to not saying anything?
Yes, and that's a really good point, because absolutely saying anything, even if you think it was something stupid that you said to us, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Saying anything, acknowledging Maya's life,
Yes.
acknowledging Maya's death, acknowledging our pain, saying anything is better than saying nothing. Because
Yeah.
I can tell you, after you lose a child, you also lose friends. Obviously, a lesser painful thing, but it's a fact. Friends, and sometimes family members, because people don't know what to say, so they think that saying nothing or not bringing Maya up will somehow lessen our pain, but in fact it did the opposite. And then people would simply drift out of our lives, because it's like they felt like if we weren't reaching out, why are they going to make the effort to reach out? And I mean, how can you reach out to people when you're grieving such a terrible loss? Your life, you simply shut down. Your personality shuts down. Your ability to cope kind of isn't there anymore. So
Mhm.
super, super important. I can't even stress this enough, how important it is for the friends and family and just anyone that person's life to continue to reach out. Even if I said like no to coffee a million times, I
Yes.
might say yes the next time, and then we might have a super meaningful conversation. Those things really, really help
Yeah,
a
so
parent
just
who's going through
continuing
this.
to reach out, continue to reach out. I loved to share just randomly memories of my, even though, she was not even two, just this little girl, but I still remember her, and her big smile and her big snowsuit and oh, she's adorable. Is it fair to say sharing memories and stuff like that too, of what you remember of
Yes.
them and things like that? Yeah. And I love
Yes.
that, just continuing on, because you might say no 10 times, but on
Yeah,
the 11th time, that might be the day that you're feeling, up
that's
for it.
right. Oh, thank you for bringing up about sharing memories. I forgot about that,
Yeah.
because I mean, of course, I love hearing about Maya. We love saying her name out loud,
Yes.
Maya, because of course, when that child is gone, you're not speaking her name out loud as much as we once were. So it's very meaningful to have people say her name and tell us their memories of her,
Mm.
because it could be a story we've never heard before. So
Yes.
it's really special.
So on that thread, I mean, something is better than nothing, but what would you say? Well, there's obviously some not so great questions you've probably had over the years. Maybe not, but what would you say are like some, frustrating questions that you've had people ask you?
Some of them are cliches. I'm sure you've heard them before.
Yeah.
It's pretty painful for somebody to say to a mom who's just lost her child that, well, she's in a better place now. That's, it's kind of a terrible thing to hear, because the only place she should be is with her family. Or saying things, I mean, Maya didn't suffer, but perhaps someone who had a child that was terribly ill or something. Thank goodness she's no longer suffering. She's in a better place. Or another thing that really bothers me is everything happens for a reason. Maybe in other parts of life that saying is true, but I don't believe that saying is true, or definitely, or at least don't say it to somebody who's just lost a child.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's amazing advice, because sometimes we kind of panic and we don't even know what
exactly.
to say. And again, it's not, obviously they're not trying to, say something ill-hearted, but
No,
I think that's really good advice for people not knowing what to say. Those are just some things maybe to leave out.
maybe perhaps asking specifics surrounding the actual death, like, what happened, what, I don't know, because that could bring up a lot of triggers for someone too. Just going into those minute details can be very painful to relive. So
Absolutely.
something to be mindful of.
No, I think that's great.
I'm not super spiritual, so for
Mhm.
me, leaning on religion and spirituality wasn't a big help, but I know for other people it is.
Yes, like your
Seeking
family,
out,
that would be
yeah, seeking out meaning, seeking out their church or that community can be very helpful if
absolutely.
that's what you believe in.
Mhm. You're now sitting with someone that's just lost a child, let's say, and what advice would you give to, I know you said kind of the support group and things like that. What would you tell them? You've been through 7 years now having lost Maya. What's kind of on the top of your heart that you would share with them?
I don't think that I would give advice necessarily, but I think I could sit there and listen, open up the conversation, and just, I would simply say, tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what's on your mind. and nothing's out of bounds because I've been there.
Yeah.
I don't know how you are feeling in your situation, but I've been where you've been. You can tell me anything and I won't judge. And I'm here to support you. I'm here to listen to you. That brings me back to why I think it is so valuable to have that kind of peer connection, somehow reaching out or making relationships with another mom or parent who's had a similar loss.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I've never lost a spouse. I haven't lost a parent or a sibling, but I think losing a child is a particularly horrible and painful loss.
I have 3 children. I mean, I think about Maya every day. I couldn't imagine. So absolutely. And I think anyone who's lost a child, that's a special, not special in a good way, but
it's just, we say like in the group, we call it, can't remember the exact words, but it was like it was like we're members of a terrible club that you never ever want to join, but somehow we're part of it. And you can't leave the club because, there's no getting out of it. It's just a way we just can come together and somehow support one another in all these various stages of grief. Because I remember going to, perhaps the very first meeting, and it was very fresh. Like Maya had maybe passed away several months ago. And I'm sitting in a room full of all these other moms. And, we're all sharing our stories. And some moms were saying like, I lost my child 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. And I'm thinking, how are you still sitting there living your life? Like, how have you not somehow died of heartbreak? But the fact is you don't. You don't die of grief. You don't die of heartbreak. You somehow find a way to pick up these broken pieces and carry on. I don't know how it happens. It just happens over time.
That is powerful. And I think that's something, one could say that's gone through another person that's going through it right now is, you're not going to die from this. You will be able to move forward. And I think all these little tips is gonna help them for sure. So Maya passed in 2013, years went by, and then you were blessed with another little baby girl, little Haley, right? How old is Haley now? She's
3.5.
Oh my goodness. So how is that for you? I know this isn't a plan, but
that's okay.
How was that for you to introduce another beautiful little girl into your life?
You're going to get me crying again. Well, as you know, after losing Maya, obviously total devastation to our family. And I wanted so badly to have another child, and it was a struggle, and that's a whole other issue. So for us to be able to have Haley all those years later, oh my goodness, it was the biggest thrill for us. And like, what a blessing that little kid is. And she is such a spitfire. Like, she gives us a run for our money like no other child we've had. So some way she was just like the perfect gift, the perfect child at the right time for us.
Yes. And I think whether someone decides to go on to have another child or not, I think, is it fair to say, you didn't have Haley to replace Maya, of course.
Even initially, I had to search my own feelings. Like Jason and I both had to talk about this a great deal because it was so. I wasn't trying to replace Maya. I never felt like I was trying to replace Maya. I felt in my heart I was trying to add to my family. I wanted to, bring joy back to our family. I wanted to just find a way to be happy again. I'm not saying that you can't be happy with one child, like with our Zoe. I mean, I'm not saying that in any way. I just felt like I had more love to give, and I wanted more children. I just felt like it was very important for me to pursue that. I wanted to bring joy back into our lives. And in fact, Haley's full name is Haley Joy. And Jason came up with that. Believe it or not, he came up with her middle name, and it's just the most perfect middle name you could give a child like Haley. People call children like that the rainbow baby.
Yeah.
It's when you have a baby after experiencing a child loss. So, I mean, truly, she brought more joy to our family.
I forgot her middle name was Joy. And actually at the end of, I've started at the end of each episode that I record, I say, go create joy in your life.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think too many people, it is something that you can go and actually create. and I think too many people are living unhappy, and there's just so much mental illness, that people are struggling with. And I think, if you really do go focus on just going and creating that joy, everything can change. And I think it's amazing what you have done with everything that you've gone through. And I think you will absolutely have an impact on a lot of people by sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, I guess. And thank you for those hard questions. They're hard, but they're good questions. And I think it is important information to talk about, because too often grief and loss have been seen as, unmentionable subjects. Mm-hmm. And I think many years ago, people were just expected to deal with it privately and quietly, and then go about their lives and just sort of get over it. It's not possible to get over a loss like this. You just have to get through it and struggle. And absolutely, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have good days. You're going to have terrible days. And that's just the way it's going to be for the rest of your life. But there is, like you say, it's possible to find joy again.
Amazing advice. And I do believe talking about it is probably really helpful. Yeah.
For me, it was helpful to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And to share.
Well, thank you, Amy, for sharing today. I really appreciate it. I trust that everyone, make sure to like and share and comment and pass this along to people that have dealt with, maybe a similar situation, or family members that can help someone that's dealt with grief or loss. And I just appreciate you taking the time today, Amy.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you again, Amy, for sharing. I really appreciate you telling us your story today and some things that have worked for you along the last 7 years. Please make sure to share, like, comment, subscribe. And there are so many people that could be impacted by watching Amy's story. Look forward to having you tune in next time.